I think a lot of female athletes suffer in silence. They have a lot of pressure and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And obviously, sports and school to do well in both of those areas, they feel maybe like they're alone in this, but like they're not.
Okay, hey, tallest podcast on earth. We're back with Rachael Adams. Look, I like a lot of times I don't like to talk too much before we get started just because like this is casual. I miss you, dude. I just like haven't talked to you in a long time. You were such a familiar face when we both had like surgeries at the same time too. Like I felt like we had a real tight connection at that point too. There's like so much I'm interested in your life right now and what's going on. But the first thing I want to say is like, what's up, dude?
I know we spent a lot of time, like a long, long winter, summer together.
Yeah. And that was 2018, 2019 maybe.
2019.
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah. Okay. For those of you who don't know Rachael Adams, like, first of all, how do you not know Rachael Adams? But second of all, Rachael Adams is a volleyball legend, a 2016 Olympian. And the thing I love the most about you is you're just the good times queen, dude. Like from not knowing you, day one conversation with you, you were just like so warm and inviting and just like fun and uniquely yourself, like from day one. And I just wanted to give you some love right off the bat because like that's why like because this podcast is so new, I'm like, there's so many people I want to talk to. Like, there's so many people I could reach out to. And you were one of the first people, especially on the women's side, that I wanted to reach out to because I just love your vibe and love your energy. And now you're like transitioning out of the sport. There's like so much going on. So I just want to know, like, right off the bat, like, how are you? What's up, dude?
There is literally so much going on, but thank you for the words of affirmation to start off with, because like I'm all about words of affirmation. That's my
Cool.
love language.
Hey.
And yeah, but I'm here in Cincinnati. I moved to Japan. I got married in June. My husband plays basketball there. And I started to take that break from volleyball around May. So there's been so many transitions in my life. And so when I'm trying to reflect on this year, looking into the new year and trying to just look back at everything, I just see it as like one big transition.
Mm.
And so it's been a lot, but it's been very exciting. But it's been a full year of just like new chapters turning. Like I remember when I got married, one of Alex's family members came up to me. She's like, I read an article about things that I don't know what it led to. Uh, I don't know. The hardest things in people's lives are when they move, when they get married, when they change jobs, and when something else, or maybe when someone dies. And I'm like, well, 3 out of 4 I've done in like the last like 4 or 5 months. And I'm like, it is heavy, but it is good.
Cool. Well, it was nice to have Rachael Adams on. Thank you for your life update. Well,
Yeah.
that's everything. No, that's yeah, that's a lot. And gosh, it was, before we started this, I was like, where do I kind of want to begin with you? Like, where do we even begin? Because there's so much that I want to dive into, the transitioning, kind of taking a little break from volleyball, transitioning into something completely new and different, getting married. Like, there's so much. But the first place I want to start, just to touch a little bit on like your career, um, I want to highlight that, like, and this is just from what I remember. I remember you came into the national team, Jim, and you were there actually before me. You kind of started with the national team in like 2013, maybe 14.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
2013.
2013. And can you describe to me what your come up was like? Because here's what I remember about you. This is why I connected with you so well, is like when I came on the national team, I was like eighth middle, I didn't come on the national team like, oh, he's fighting for a starting spot. And did you have something similar?
I would say I had something similar. So when I joined the team in 2013, the middle blockers from the Olympics before in London were still there or a part of the team. So
Mm-hmm.
Krista Harmato and Fuluka Akinradowo. And then there was other like semi-veteran middle blockers like Lauren Gibbemeyer. Um, who else was Lauren Paolini?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, So other middles that were in front of me. So I was fresh and new in 2013. I never had any experience in the USA gym at the national team level.
Right.
I did play youth national, I did play junior national, but my year graduating class of, 2012 in college never got invites to join the national team, where they do now. Like I never saw the national team gym. I never had any experience. Um, so I was fresh and new. And when I walked in the gym, I did have a chance to travel with the first roster. So Karch was a brand new coach with the national team, like as a head coach, and he was looking to try new things, try new people. And so it was the perfect chance for me to kind of get my feet wet and have opportunities. So there were a lot of Olympians that took a break from that London Olympics. So, and there was room for other people like myself to kind of break through. And so even though I traveled with the team, I was never a starter and I was never seen as someone. Well, I could, obviously I was seen as someone who could be a starter, but I
Sure.
wasn't a starter right off the bat or
Right.
been able to step right into that position. I had 1 year of professional volleyball under me. I played in Poland. So everything was kind of fairly new to me. And uh, but if you would have asked someone a year before the Rio Olympics if I would have been a starter or would have gone to Olympics, they would have said no.
Why is that?
I wasn't really in the mix. So Tori Dixon was around. Um, who else was there?
Was Gibby still
Um,
there?
Gibby got kind of made a different route after the 2008 2014 World Championships. And so she wasn't a part of, I guess, that 2015 mix and that 2016 mix, but then came back after Rio. Um,
So I'm just curious, like what led to there's a ton of like legendary middles to 2016. You're playing and
yeah,
starting
it
and
is
fucking
insane.
going to the Olympics. Like what happened, dude?
Okay, so let me tell you. So in 2015, I was not really in the mix. I didn't even go to the Olympic qualifier. So the World Cup at the time was an Olympic qualifier. And so they went there. I did not travel and I just stayed back in Anaheim. And I don't know why I didn't go home or go prepare to join my team, who at the time, I'm not sure who it was. I guess that
You're in Turkey, in
was
Italy?
I in Turkey? I'm not sure if I signed them, but I was in the gym. Or it's 2016 the qualifier? No, they would qualify the year before. They would qualify the year before, right?
Dude, I'm the worst. Just listening to you struggle over putting dates together is like giving me anxiety where I'm
This
like,
is
please don't
really
ask me any
hard.
questions.
Okay.
Here's what I'm really interested in. Like what in your mind was like the defining moment of like how do you go from in 2015, you're like not even like a real part of the mix to 2016, you're
Okay.
starting, dude. You're in
All
the
right.
Olympics
So
starting. Like what happened?
numbers and dates aside.
Forget the dates, dude. That's for like kids on
Okay.
Scantron tests. Okay. That's not for this conversation,
Okay,
dude.
I got it. All right. Hopefully there's no volleyball nerds in here. Like, well, according to my, anyways, they went to Olympic qualification and now it's supposed to be the World Cup. They did not qualify. So they had to come back to Anaheim. And surprisingly, I was there and I was literally just training by myself, working on my serve and serving on a different court.
Mm,
Anyways, expecting them to qualify. They came back. Krista Harmato had a migraine. And so they needed me. And so
mm.
I went to the next Olympic qualification, didn't play, but I traveled. I went
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And then I went overseas. And that was when I played for Emoco Volley my second year.
Okay.
Alicia Glass was a setter, Kelsey
Mm.
Robinson, the outside hitter, and Megan Hodge, the other outside hitter.
It was a sick year.
We had a mini national team there.
Yeah, that's
We
tight.
won the first Scudetto, and now everyone knows who Emoco Volley is now.
Yeah.
Anyways, 2015, a coach came up to me, Jamie Morrison,
Hmm.
after a game, and I was semi-starting, and he was like, "Why does it look like you don't deserve to be out there?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," but I didn't feel like I deserved to be out there. I started my volleyball career late, and so I took
What's
this Olympic.
late, by the way?
in high school, freshman year of high school.
Is that
I
late?
asked,
That's when I started too, dude. What are you talking about?
well, you see the kids
I'm
now,
saying
they're
prime
starting
time,
in like
baby.
kindergarten. They're
That's
like in
true.
club traveling teams in kindergarten. Like it's
That's
not
true.
normal.
That's true.
And so whatever, I slept over my best friend's house. She asked me if I wanted to come incoming freshman volleyball camp. I said yes. Brought my reading book. Coaches asked me if I wanted to join. I said sure, join. Now we're here. Okay. So
Yeah.
anyways, I brought that limiting belief with me that, my skills weren't enough. I was enough because I started so late. So I always felt like I had to play catch up. And so even though I went to University of Texas on scholarship, got invited to the national team gym, I still had this small limiting belief that I wasn't enough. And so I didn't really fully take up space and I didn't really fully, stand in my strength. So I would have these moments of like self-doubt, or if I made a mistake, I'm bad. Or if I made a mistake, I could spiral. And I just had a lot of mindset stuff going on that I really just held myself back. So when my coach came up to me and he asked me that, it really made me look in and reflect on, okay, what's actually going on? And thank God we also had our sports psych Mike Voigt there.
Mm.
And so he was introducing new things to us like positive self-talk and awareness of our breath. And so all this was just like a perfect storm. So when I went into Emoco that year in Italy, I felt like I was in a science lab, like mixing and diving and journaling and learning and implementing these things into the game and practice. And I was like in a lab, and slowly, I felt like I gained that confidence. So when mistakes happened, I was like, oh, okay. Anyways, next point, like learn
I'm gonna
from
s-
it.
I'm gonna slow
Yeah,
you down.
stop.
No, I'm gonna slow you down. I think you're bringing up a lot of really interesting things to dive into. Um, I'm I'm really curious. You said that you were just like in your own mind and you felt like you didn't deserve to be there. Like, can you like better paint the picture of what that looked like? Because I
Mhm.
think obviously a lot of especially younger athletes deal with that same similar mental situation. But I'm really curious, like, what does that look like for you? And then more so, like, what did your confidence look like then? Like, were you just not confident and you were still fucking balling out and playing in like one of the best teams in Italy and on the national team? Like, I'm so confused, dude.
I know. So when people say like, oh, like your confidence, they're imagining like my head is down, like I'm not making eye contact, like just rocked confidence. But it was in a way, if you look at this, I would get in my way. So you know how athletes make mistakes and they start to spiral. Like if you make 3 mistakes in a row, they kind of check out. They're on their own island. I would do stuff like that to where I would make mistakes and like check out of the game. I would be like such a perfectionist and I only focus on the mistakes I made after a game and not ever recognize like the good things. So when you're never recognizing the good things, it's hard to have that like good confidence. And one thing that really stuck out to me about mistakes and
Well, you were like that
focusing,
your whole career? Like even when you were younger, leading up
I was
to
really tough on myself. I never let myself like think like, okay, we're good. I always felt like, no, we have to be better. And so when you're you're sitting in that like I have to be better mindset, you never really think you're good. So you think you're great. Like you think you're good, but like I'm not great. Or there's just moments where I just didn't fully connect my game because I had mindset things holding me back. So
you're telling me
um
University of Texas, you make
yeah.
first team All-American. At no point you're like, I'm pretty good.
I mean, you think like, okay, you're good, but like you're not great, you're not enough. Like people say, like, oh, you're potential. And so that's what I was holding. Like, yeah, you can look back at videos of me like balling out at Texas, but there was moments where I could have owned it more than I did have. Like for example, I didn't believe in my serve. I never ran a slide. Um, you know, I remember moments back in college where Jarrett would get on me about like passing the short serve and I would get in my head about that, like when that communication wasn't good or, I never handled the second ball, just like little things
Mm.
like that.
Classic middle
Um,
mentality. We hate to see
Classic
that.
middle mentality
We
there for sure.
empathize with you.
Yeah. So if you're middling there, yeah, so many middles can relate,
We're
but
middling out right now.
middling out. But
So sick.
definitely showed up more on the national team. I remember reading an article and it said, think of like the best player in your team. And immediately I thought like Jordan Larson. And it asked like, do they make mistakes? And I said, yeah, like in my head. And it said, well, why don't you give yourself the grace to make, like, do you, like when Jordan makes mistakes, do you think she's the worst player in the world? Or do you think she's bad or incapable? I said, I felt like, no, but like, why, when I make mistakes, I'm so hard on myself. I hold them, I don't let them go. And I see them as signs as maybe my skill is lacking. Maybe I'm not great, or maybe I don't have the possibility to like just take up space on the court.
What I'm trying to understand right now is when there was that shift for you, or you start playing because your friend invites you to some camp at 15 until national team, same girl. Like, I'm more curious about like what was the transitioning, because when I hear you talking, I'm trying to relate and just using my own experience where it's like when you're younger and no one expects anything of you, it's like so much easier to play free in your mind, right? It's the same with like if you're on a team and your team like sucks and you're playing against the best team in the league, like how often do you see those teams who like shouldn't be beating this team every once in a while just like win in 5 or win in 4 because like these teams they don't have the motivation and you can play completely free, you know? And so I think about like no expectation, you know? And when I first started playing, it was like no one expected anything. I was the credit card vert and like no one, I was just like this big, tall, dorky kid trying to do something he loved doing. And the transition from that to now go to University of Hawaii my senior year, where I'm like, I'm the shit. I'm balling out. And I struggled with the same thing, like most athletes do, but like I was like, I'm fucking good, dude. And then went to national team, went overseas, and it's been a humbling experience, you know? But
Yeah.
like that's what I'm curious about is like, was there a moment where it was like, I'm not thinking about it at all. And then all of a sudden you're like national team. Now we're talking Olympics. Now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, now there's this expectation that like, well, I just hit, 600%, 700% and had 5 blocks in a 3 or 4 set match. Like now they're going to be expecting this, or like I served really good tonight. Now they're going to expect me to serve good every night. Like that type of dichotomy. I'm really curious how.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it's funny. I was never in a role. Okay, obviously my high school team, I was one of, the top recruited coming out of my class, like third in the class graduating. So it was like, oh wow, she's so good. But when I got to college, I wasn't an athlete. Like, and again, if someone asks the Texas players and Jarrett, while I was at Texas, if I would be the one to go to the Olympics and win a medal, it wouldn't be me. So it's not like I was in the top of my space in Texas either. So I was kind of in the middle. They had like Ashley Ingle, Julianne Fawcett, Destiny Hooker was on the team at the time. And I was doing my job well. And yes, I was an All-American, but it wasn't like Jarrett was thinking like she's going to go to Olympics or anyone was thinking that. So
mm,
I didn't really have that pressure. And when I was graduating from Texas, I thought I was going to go to New York and join an advertising agency. It wasn't like I was going to go to the national team level. So
mm,
many levels where it's like, not that I accidentally got there, but like the path just appeared. And so I was like, okay, let me go to this level. But it wasn't like people were like, okay, you're about to go to the Olympics. Like you better prepare, but no one expected anything really from me along the
mm,
way.
mm. And did you feel like you were using that to your advantage? Or
Oh,
did you
absolutely.
not, were you so in your own head still? Because it's what's crazy is like from what you're describing, it's like you can play free all the time because no one
Yeah.
expects anything of you. No one thinks you're going to the Olympics. No one thinks you're going to be the star of like middle blockers on the national team. And then you're selling me on the same hand, you're like, I don't like you have the body language of like someone who's just like, oh, like I'm just happy to be here, maybe, or like, not this like confident baller. Like you're balling out, and it should almost reflect in your body language that you're balling out. And it sounds like you're not. And I'm just curious, like, well, it's crazy because it sounds like you were set up for like pure freedom. What happened?
Yeah, you would think it's pure freedom. So, yes, there was no expectations, but at the same time, I was like, I have these goals and I have this drive, and I'm just like working hard in the background, like pushing myself because like I want to be the best and I don't think I'm good enough. So, I've had moments of greatness, but I have moments of like just being up and down because I couldn't control like my mind and how I showed up every day. One day I'm really good, the next day, like, where's my mind at? You know what I mean? Like when I'm
Mm,
showing and I'm performing on the court. So I wasn't able to give that steadiness to the team that the team would need it. I would have
Mm,
moments of like not really being there, not really executing, but then I had moments of like I'm balling out. Like you could be really good, but like why aren't you showing this every single day? I had no control over how I was able to show up for the team.
mm,
And that would things that contribute that would just like mistakes and just my mindset and how I was able to bounce back from mistakes, how I felt, um, keeping that eye contact, keeping that good body language. So that transition to when I learned how to do that, I would stand taller on the court, like make that eye contact, move like, are you envisioning what I'm saying?
here's
Like,
what I want to
there's
here's what I do. I want to paint a very clear picture. And so for me,
okay.
it's like what I'm hearing is 2015. It was like a defining moment in your career of,
Yeah.
okay, I need to start really going all in and working on some of these other things that you're now describing. So what I want to know is was there anyone that you worked with that helped you make this change? And then like, what were like three things or a couple things that come to mind of that are like things people can start doing right away to start making those changes when they're not feeling confident? Like, what was your experience like in 2015?
Yeah, so that was my defining moment. I told you, like, I was in Italy and I was in that apartment journaling and blah, blah, blah. But the things that I changed were self-talk, body language, and diving deeper into my limiting beliefs and and like limiting capabilities. So self-talk is that voice in your head that's constantly going, whether you know it or not, it's conscious, you're unaware of it. And it's what Mike Boyd said is go to practice and notice what your mind does when you make a mistake. And I went to practice that one day in 2015 and I missed a serve and I'm thinking, man, I suck. Man, why do I always miss my serve? Like, why can't I do this? And so I realized I was speaking negatively to myself in so many ways. Yes, maybe my body language was good, but I'm sitting there on the court like, man, I just hit into the block or, woe is me. And that stuff starts to hold you back. And I learned that I can either lift myself up or tear myself down with my words. And I decided to lift myself up and be a cheerleader like in my corner. So if I make a mistake, I'm like, okay, cool. That was a perfect pass. They got a great kill. It's not because I'm a bad blocker. Let's move on. Like next point. Or I'm just being an advocate in my corner throughout the game. And then the second thing I said was just body language. Because the first thing to go for me was like body language. Maybe you know, when I start to have a bad game, I begin to like be on my own little islands on the court. Like I get in my head, I stop making eye contact with my teammates. My voice gets a little bit quieter. I'm not at the net, like pointing out stuff. I'm not talking with my pin blockers. I start to get really quiet.
Mm,
And I learned that like when you change your body language, like your mind can follow and like those deep breaths and that good eye contact and speaking with my teammates was allowing me to like maintain that good body language and feel good on the court. And then my mind would slowly follow. And like I told you, just like the limiting beliefs, why did I keep telling myself like I'm a bad server? Like who says, like have more of a growth mindset. And when I did connect those dots with Mike Voigt back when I was in the national team, I became best server of Montreal, which is a tournament that we used to go to.
mm.
Um, and that's when it clicked for me. I was like, dang, like this mindset stuff, the way we talk to each other, like is really powerful and is really important.
Um, I want to know like who's because the part I'm also trying to understand is like 2015. You're like, I don't know. Did you have this moment of like, okay, something's got to change, and then because right away you're like, yep, and here are the three things, and I'm just like, well, what led to? Was there someone that you connected with, or did you have a mentor or someone who's like, hey, here's what I want to do, let's do this, or like, did you start reading books on self help, or like, where did you even come
Yeah.
up with the idea of like, well, I need to change because that's the hardest part for a lot of kids and for a lot of athletes as well is
Yeah.
the self-awareness. First recognizing that like, oh, I don't like this constant state I'm in. Maybe I should try to search for external resources to understand and learn more and learn how to have a growth mindset. But it's when you describe it, it's like It's so easy. One day you woke up and you're like, all right, I'm going to be more aware of how I feel. And it's totally true. It's like such a great place to start.
Mhm.
But like, how did you learn that information? Like, where did you go for that?
Yeah. So the first thing that set it off was that conversation I had with my coach when he's like, why does it look like you don't deserve to be out there? That was my defining moment that made me ask myself those questions like, what am I actually feeling? What is going on? Like, why am I not taking up space on the court?
Mm,
And so we also worked along Mike Voigt, who was our sports psych. So he had brought up a lot of these things, but sports psych can bring up a lot of stuff, but until you apply it, until it makes sense, it doesn't really make sense, like breathing and self-talk and mindfulness. So I hadn't really applied it until I was in Italy. So I was in my apartment. I was Googling a lot of like confidence and believing in yourself. And that's when I learned about like self-beliefs, and I listened to a lot of podcasts. And it was weird. I was listening to a lot of like life coaches, just like talking about like it was very soft and like
can you throw out any
fluffy.
names or resources?
There
Anything
was
you
this one
remember?
girl named Connie Chapman. She's a life coach. She has a podcast. Um, there was another book author that was, what did she?
I'll tell you what, you go on YouTube right now and you type in fucking self-help anything. And it's so awesome that now it's like there's more resources than ever were
There's more
available,
resources than ever. And I've always been
Yeah.
like a weird self-help. Like I love diving into like articles. Like even when I was in
Yeah.
high school, I was reading like The New Earth. And so when I go into like Barnes and Nobles, I love the self-help check
Yeah. Yeah. I feel
aisle.
that.
So whenever something happens in my life, I'm diving into the internet, I'm diving
Mm,
in the podcast, and I'm looking up terms. And that's just how I kind of reflect. So even if it's like relationships, like I'm listening to like relationship podcasts and
mm,
all this stuff. And I just want to like learn as much as I can, and little things kind of connect along the way. And I'm a
that's
big
cool.
journaler. So a lot of things that helped me was just like journaling it out and sharing my feelings in a notebook, sharing what I'm learning. And obviously through the articles, there was like journal prompts and walked me through like limiting beliefs and identifying what they are and like questioning them.
Walk me through some of the journaling stuff, because if you don't mind, like my
Yeah.
my personal experience with journaling is so tough because I feel like now I do a lot of like creative writing kind of stuff just to stimulate a different part of my brain, which is like sometimes I'll do just like a free write, which is 20 minutes of nonstop. The pen can't stop. Whatever I can write. I don't know what to think. I don't know. I just let it go. But I'm curious, like if I do, because I'm it's so interesting to hear that. I'm like so similar to you in that way, where it's like if something's going on with my life, like I want to learn. I'm looking up philosophers on what they think about this. I have certain people like Alan Watts is someone when it comes to like my existential thoughts that I like to go towards. And like there's so many different avenues. But I'm really curious, like what does that look like for you when it comes to journaling or prompts? Because a lot of times when I journal, I'm just like, I get tired of journaling because I feel like I'm just journaling the things that I'm already thinking about so much. And a lot of it is negative. It's like, I don't, and maybe I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because like a lot of times I journal, if we're talking about journaling, like just journaling my thoughts a little bit, like what's going on, I get sick of journaling quickly because I'm like, it's all negative shit. It's not like, it's like the problems I have. It's like, I'm not journaling like self-love or journaling like the things I'm grateful for all the time. And I have in the past, and I'm constantly trying to get back to it because I think it's important. But for me, journaling's been tough because it's like I end up just journaling the things that like I'm already thinking about, and then I see them on paper and I'm like, I don't want to journal anymore.
Yeah, so
Like
I've literally I have journals from like the 3rd grade where it's like written like Sarah picked a booger. I've been journaling
so
since I was
cool.
younger. And I think it's because I'm an only child, so that was my
Mm,
space to just like tell everything. And I've learned like you can be as honest as you want to your journal. Like your pages aren't going to judge you.
mm,
They're not gonna be like, why'd you write that? Why'd you say that? I'm offended. You're just writing down your most honest thoughts and your most honest experience that you're experiencing in that moment. And I think you can learn a lot through just being honest with how you're feeling and
yeah.
with how things are going. And I've learned so much that way, like, oh
Mm,
man, like that's how I was really feeling. And so I even started writing in my notes, and I have notes from like 2015.
so cool.
Yeah. And so there's so many different ways to journal. I know a lot of people can get intimidated by a blank page, but if I were to recommend someone start their journaling, like journey with journaling is to have journal prompts. You can go on Pinterest and type in journal prompts, and there's journal prompts from everything, like journal prompts for waking up, journal prompts for going to sleep, journal
Mm,
prompts for starting a new month. And one of my favorite like post practice journal prompts was writing down what went well. It doesn't have to be a journal, but it's just like noting and writing down stuff. So the first question was what went well, like 3 things that went well, and the next thing was how can I improve next time? So since I had perfectionist tendencies, I would usually after a game just focus on the things that went bad. So this
mm,
allowed me to get connected to 3 things that went well for me. And
mm.
instead of and the next question, just listing things that went bad, it's like, how can I improve the next time? So that's not really journaling, but it's just a way to like get your thoughts out on paper. And then over time, be able to look back at it and just have like a space to kind of get clear. But for me, when I was in Italy and I was getting clear on my journey with mindset, the things I would journal about um, was just be like how I'm feeling on the court and just slowly like working my way through that and just noting things that went well and things that aren't going well. And I wanted to show up more consistently. So I would take note on pages like, how did I show up today? And how did I want to? And just like keep a space so I could hold myself accountable to days that I showed up well. I didn't have like just mental meltdowns or get frustrated myself or just show up inconsistently as a teammate. So it's just a space where you can put anything and everything. It doesn't have to be, like you said, just writing down all the negative stuff, but just a space you can spill out. And I love being able to like look back at it.
Yeah. Do you read like old journal entries?
I do. And like at
Cool.
some point leading up to Olympics, I thought I was gonna like write a book and someday somebody was gonna like read back of it. So I have like journal entries, so like where I am, what time it is, what I'm thinking about, and just like my journey leading up to the Olympics. And it's so cool being able to read back to those moments.
I mean, yeah, that's amazing. In fact, like one of my favorite books as of the last couple years was a book called Green Light by Matthew McConaughey.
Mm.
And he started journaling since he was like a kid or like super young, like up until this date, every single day. So he has like 30 years of journals. And when I was listening to him describe like in all the things that he did in his life and his journey, I was just like, how cool, dude, that every day he wrote a journal and saved it. Like, it's so funny. And I can imagine it's like this too, where I look at old photos, like I'm sure I don't know. For me, it's like I look at old photos and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I wore that, or I can't believe I was doing that. I can't believe like I got away with that, or I can't believe I was that kid. Like it's so cool to see like old photos of yourself and bring you back to those moments. And I can imagine journaling is like also a really unique way that's not a photo that brings you back to maybe even like a deeper connection with that moment rather than just a photo or something.
No, absolutely. Cause I've written down like all my grade school crushes and what I was thinking. And I'm looking back, I'm like, this is insane.
Damn, that's
You're
so
just
sick.
in the mind of like your high school self. So many things that I forgot. And luckily, when I started the national team, I had this little journal and I wrote down like who's the roommates, who traveled, all the memories from the trip. And I have memories that I forgot from those national team moments. And now I still have them.
Mm.
I just think it's such an amazing way to like teleport back into the mind of yourself. And just like you said, you get to look at your old outfits, but imagining getting to look at like your old mind and your old thoughts.
Yeah, I mean that's the coolest part, and also for me the part that I'm like kind of okay not not seeing again. Like I don't know, I know you've evolved a lot too, and we all do as we get older, and sometimes I'm like, or it's probably I'm kind of happy I'm
Yeah.
not reading those old thoughts, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm I'm really interested as well. You talked about how you just kind of like it was in your personality to want to dive deeper into these subjects, and it's clear that like you have such a depth to you as well. I'm really interested as I've gotten older. I've especially this last year, 2 years, it's a part of why I started this podcast. Like I've started noticing maybe since started living in Poland. I was like, I miss community, like my community, like trying to build that. And when I hear you talk about you going through all of this, which was sparked by a coach, but ultimately it was just kind of like your own personal journey. Like Do you think there's any benefit in like having a community of like-minded people to help you make that kind of change in your life?
Absolutely. And I'm happy you asked that because one of my things next year that I want to create is community because you see so many people, even if it's on the internet, there's people that have been able to create a community with like-minded people that are like want to dive into that journey of growth, want to dive into that journey of how to like shift their mindset. And I'm trying to figure out how I can do that, but I know that I have to show up and be a leader in that way. If you want to create community, you have to first share. It's not just like people are going to start sharing with you and you're just going to find your people. But I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to show up
Hmm.
and share so you can find your people and attract these people that want to be on that journey with you. But you asked in one of the other questions like who guided me on this journey. And I did mention like my sports psych, but I wish that I had like a mentor or someone, obviously I mentioned Connie Chapman, but she is not an athlete. She has not been to Olympics. She has not played any sports. And so I couldn't find that community where I could, dive in and connect to on this journey. So that's something that I want to create. And obviously I started my mentorship program, but that's more one-on-one, but I'm looking to create a space where I can attract more people who are experiencing what I've have experienced. And I think you're trying to do the same thing as you're starting this podcast, right? Can I say
Right.
that about
You
you?
definitely can't. And I need to say one thing, okay? Because this is just how my brain works.
Okay.
I have mentorship stuff. You have mentorship stuff. I started the Middle Blocker Academy. I started the podcast. I'm like teeing you up with these questions that lead right into what we're pursuing also right now. But dude, honestly, I wish I would have had this type of like potential to connect with a professional athlete when I was younger. And here's the truth about like just share a small bit of my story. This is not about me, but a small bit. I had a mentor when I was 15 when I first started playing. He was actually my high school coach. His name is Ryan Georges. And he paid for my first year of club, my first season of club because we couldn't afford it. He like believed in me and he was with me all the time. Like I was so grateful to have that. And I've always connected with older, like when I first got to UC Irvine because I went there for like a couple months. But like when I first got there, I like connected with this guy, Jeff Schmitz, who was a fifth year senior, and like always had someone that I looked up to in that sense to like help guide me through my life in some way and through my volleyball journey and people I related with like existentially. And then all of a sudden, like we just filmed this, we created this amazing relationship. And now I look at like, what a beautiful thing. Like, hell yeah, dude. I want you to sign up and work with me one-on-one. I want you to sign up with Rachel and work with her one-on-one. But like, let's put the like pitching or what we do aside. Like, it's such an amazing thing that you can work with anyone from anywhere across the world, like anywhere across the states. Like you guys don't understand like the power in that. And to me, it's like it gets me so excited about the future because community is everything. Like talk about, like you said, like working one-on-one is like obviously fantastic. Getting to work with someone like you is like, to me, would be like an incredible experience. But getting to also then like foster a community of people to start bringing up these questions, talking about being vulnerable. Like, I mean, I have so many thoughts on that because I just think it's so important. And I feel like, damn, a lot of my talks podcasts, like we end up talking about all these subjects. And I'm also like, because no one told me this when I was growing up playing. Like, no one said a big part of it was like, teaching you, and you don't learn this in school. You don't learn how to like deal with your emotions, the vast variety of emotions. And so people suppress emotions that need to be drawn out of you and understood. And so it makes me so happy. I was so happy to contact you and want to have you on my podcast because I think you're someone who's highlighting these things that are so important for kids and for adults and pros as well, you know? um, and so that's like right away, I think of like, in your opinion, and like specifically as a female athlete growing up, like what do you think is the most common thing that female athletes, let's say in the volleyball world, like struggle with? Like where, and you've worked with some people and you were a female athlete who rose the ranks, like where is the real struggle, you think?
Yeah, I think the real struggle is admitting that you are struggling because you think you're the only one struggling and feeling these things, but you're not. I think one of the biggest eye openers was when we did work with my void and I had a chance to sit with my teammates and so many of the older girls were sharing their struggles. I'm like, or what they struggle with in the past. I'm like, you what? Like you felt that? You got nervous? Like what? And no one
Mm,
said this out loud before. There weren't any podcasts, there weren't any things like that. And if it wasn't for those moments, like where would I hear them share these things? Would they just show up at practice and be like, Rachel, I struggled one day, or I'm struggling today? Like I didn't have that space to like hear these things, these truths. And I think a lot of female athletes suffer in silence. They have a lot of pressure and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. And obviously, sports and school to do well in both of those areas, they feel maybe like they're alone in this, but like they're not. Like everyone has struggles and fears and pressure. And like you said, a space to even just share. Like, cause you can't tell your coach before the game, like, man, like I feel, a little anxious, and if you tell your parents, sometimes they want to comfort you, but they don't know the volleyball terms. And,
mm.
they make stuff that makes your like eyes roll. But to have a place where these athletes can talk to someone, and yes, they have like sports psych and psychiatrists and therapy, but to someone who's been there before can be like, hey, I felt that too, I think is just an amazing thing.
100%. I mean, I completely agree. And I'm really, I'm wondering, like, where do you find what do you think the biggest difference between like men and women's volleyball, like mental struggles? Because like stereotypically speaking, and as someone who's played overseas for a while, and like the biggest issue I see is like, be a man. Like men don't like deal with their emotions, or like you have pain, just like suck it up. And I think there's something to having a strong mentality. And I'm learning a little bit of that with just like going in the cold water. I've been doing, like, we call it Morzavanya, where I'm going in like freezing cold water 3 times a week. And it's like, I'm
Mhm.
just like taking my little inner bitch for a ride, and it's like, let's go, baby. Like crushing that, rewiring my brain to be like, I told myself I'd get in that cold water that I don't want to be in. We're going to sit in there. We're going to come out. Like, it's been so powerful. And it's such a interesting struggle, because when it comes to most male volleyball players, I see it especially, I mean, in the States, I feel like things are changing in a positive way. Overseas, you realize that, man, some of these cultures are just like, I don't want to call it behind, because what do I know? But like, they seem very traditional, where it's like my Polish teammates are not sharing their feelings with, if they're tired, if they have some pain, like they're freaking robots, dude. And the problem is, like, then you'll see guys, and not really on this team I'm on right now, but in the past, where it's like, but then like they'll talk shit in the locker room, or like they'll make little jokes about, so it's like, oh, so I know you feel this type of way, but because
Mhm.
you won't express it, it's like, how are we ever going to find like healthy solutions to push everyone upward? And so that's like, I think on the men's side of things, it's kind of this like, be a man, and like act a certain way, and be able to handle your shit, and like just handle your emotions, or deal with the pressure. And there's no like real like good solutions. And so I'm
Yeah,
curious,
no.
on the women's side, like, do you have the same feeling, or like your experience overseas, or as a woman, like, do you think women deal with something different?
Mm.
Do you get what I'm trying to say? I didn't
Yeah, I
make
get
that
what you're
super
trying to
clear.
say. And I think in sports and out of sports, I think one of the differences is that women do have that community. Even if it's I don't think there's a place for men to share their emotions and share how they're really feeling. But within the female community, not just in sports, there's a space to where a female, like a woman, can share how they're feeling with another woman and find community and find support within that. Um, so I think there's a lot of being talked about, like when it comes to mental health, like men don't have that community in that safe place. Do you feel that men have a community? Like if you were, going through something with a girl, could you like go to your teammate and be like, hey man, I'm just going through it, I'm feeling down?
Yo, I'm the wrong guy to ask, because your boy keeps it way too honest with like strangers. But that's
Yeah.
because I also like, you know, lied a lot as a kid, like these
Yeah.
little white lies. And like my evolution has been like, for me, I'm so proud of how much I feel like I've evolved in that way. And I was lucky enough to grow up in a family where, like, my parents were good at being like, hey, how do you feel? Like, we had those
Mhm.
conversations. I
Yeah.
was lucky enough to have a family that we communicated health in a healthy way. Well, there's a lot of people who don't, and it's like trying to keep some of that in mind, because, and I've said this before on other episodes, where it's like, I'm always feel like I'm not the captain of the team, but like I end up being the mediator for everyone, where I'm just like, bitch, how do you feel? I know you're
Yes.
not telling me, like, tell me how you fucking feel, like,
Yeah.
tell me how
Yeah.
you feel. And like, I'll deal with it. If you don't want to go talk to the coach, it's like, I'll be the guy to bridge the gap between like what's really going on. And it is, so it's hard when you're like, I think most guys, yeah, I think most men don't feel comfortable to just like talk about their honest feelings with training stuff, with personal life. And I respect some of that. Like I respect, and it's something I should probably learn. It's like having some privacy and being okay with that. It's just not
Yeah.
me, baby. I keep it honest,
Yeah.
and to,
Yeah.
to a fault. And I'm okay with that for now. But that's why I was so curious, because the other side of that, when I, a dummy man, look at a female community, I'm just like, stereotypically speaking, it's like you're allowed to talk about your emotions, and because you're a
Uh,
woman, and
yeah.
like, so I was
I
like, do
mean,
you guys have the same problems? Because when I talked with Kelsey Robinson on a earlier podcast, she was telling me that like, with national team stuff, it's a different feeling, because it's like you don't want to give away too much, because you want your coach to think you're like fucking ready to go and like, hell yeah, I feel great, dude, put me
yeah.
in, even if you're like not. So things get weird as there gets more pressure. But in
Yeah.
general, do you feel like what do you think is the common issue when it comes to like mental health with women? Because maybe it's different, and that's what I want to learn.
Um, so when you were talking, I flashed back into, the day after a game or a day after a like long week of practice, we come into a circle before practice and the coach is like, is anyone tired? And we've all been complaining in the locker room, like, I'm so tired. This is so tough. But in that moment, in that circle, we're like,
No one says shit, dude.
we're like,
Yup. Yeah, dude, a
like you see
thousand
some faces
times.
like, I'm
Yeah.
a little, you might see someone like, yeah, but it's not like a synonymous, yeah, we're tired. But there is a part of like suppression, like you don't, or like a part you want to suppress your real feelings, because who wants to tell their coach, like, yeah, we're tired? Or it could be we're in the locker room talking, and then the captain goes and tells the coach like what's going on. There are moments where we can have that if you have a captain that advocates with you or for you in that way. But I still feel like there's a drop of what you're feeling in the men's team in the women's area too. But I think we're definitely more open with each other, complaining together about how we're tired, but it's just how do we relay that to the coaches, where I think we have that disconnect.
Hmm. And on like a more individual level, because and the part I'm interested is like, I equate some of this to like exactly what you brought up, which is we all meet in a circle and no one feels comfortable to tell the coach in that circle that like, yeah, actually. And the weird part, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, it's this weird dynamic also of like, no, actually I lied. I'm like processing it out loud, because sometimes I'm insecure about it, where I'm like, am I being, because there's also something of maybe being like too sensitive. And that's why some of these topics, in my opinion, need like really healthy solutions, because I've also seen the other side of it, and I won't name specific names, but like players that I know personally and I've played with, that they were so sensitive to their feelings, whether it was physically or whatever, that it was like, hey, how you doing? Every day you give me some new thing, where it's like, well,
Yeah.
let's have a little resilience, or like, and to me, that's why, for me, it's like, you have a problem, great, express it. That's great. But get straight to, what is your solution? What are you going to do about it? And this is where I've struggled in the past, where it's like, you see guys who don't try hard in the weight room, don't try this, they don't want to talk, and then they have some pain or whatever. And it's just like, they're not doing anything about it. Like that stuff to me bothers me so much.
Yeah, and you
It's
hear
like,
about it in college, like the athletic trainers, like you'll have athletes being like, "Oh, my hip hurts," and she's like, "Did you roll out? Did you do this?" And they'll have like they have rules. It's like you're not allowed to talk to me unless you've been like checking off a list saying like you rolled out, you stretched, you did all this stuff before, all of a sudden just like telling me something hurts. But sorry, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
no, I have no, I'm, dude, please stop me whenever. This is about,
No,
I'm more
yeah.
interested in you and your feelings and thoughts on some of this. And every time I get a chance to interview a lady volleyball player, I'm just trying to learn, dude. I'm really trying to better understand like how similar are our worlds. Like obviously they are. We both play volleyball, like we're in the same community. But like, and that's why from a mental perspective, I was trying to understand better, like, what are the problems that like women go through? Are they different than men? Are there things you're seeing? Or how funny, like, there might actually be the same, like the same issues, like I could
Yeah.
imagine, I don't know, even like having a male coach and feeling like maybe you can't connect with him in that way. Like I've never had a female coach, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
I
so
could
true.
imagine, I never thought about this ever, but like I could imagine that might be a way, depending on who they were, like a way different experience to have a female coach. So like now all of a sudden trying to put myself in like the shoes of a woman, it's like now imagine you have a male coach. Do you feel like in the past, like we'll put Karch aside, but like from a professional standpoint, like do you feel like it's harder to connect with a male coach than it is a female? Does it not matter? Like what
Um,
matters to you then? If it doesn't matter, like what are the important things to you then?
yeah, I mean, I definitely all the male coaches that I have, I think have had that sense of awareness that they are working with female athletes. But for me to tell you the difference of what that situational awareness that they have compared to what male teams have. But when I speak to male athletes, they're like, men just like say stuff and move past it. But when like female athletes don't really. I think there's a lot more maybe inner girl dynamics that men don't really have. And I think maybe female athletes hold on to things said too longer. And we have to talk about how when things are said to us, we have to take it as they're coming from the best source of intentions and not take it personally. But
Mm.
does that happen on the male side? Are things taken personally or are things said to you and you're just like, cool, got it, I'll make the change? Like nothing
I mean,
else is.
you keep bringing it back to the men's. We don't care about the men's. We don't care about
But
men's day.
yeah,
No,
but
I'm
I
kidding. I'm
think this
kidding.
is how the female
Yeah,
athletes
yeah.
kind of operate. I'm curious if that's
Mm.
different for the male side.
Um, yeah, you
'Cause
know, like the stereotype would be that like, yeah, men just get mad about it and then they move on because it's just like right. Like I think about that
But
for
is that a
relation.
true story? That's what I want to know. Is
Here's what I
that a
want to say.
true
Sometimes
story?
stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. Okay. Like, yes, I think that like in this case, I'm kidding, but like in this case, like, yeah, I think for the most part, guys are pretty good about like, you know, being mad at someone or whatever, and then just like they just get over it and it's just like
Yeah.
whatever. But I say that too, and I also know times where there's like a lot of passive aggressiveness,
Mm,
where it's just like, oh man, if you weren't a part of this culture and you were raised to like be okay being vulnerable with another human being and like expressing how you feel in a healthy manner, we might actually have a more enjoyable environment sometimes, you know? And then at the same time, it's like, let's also like, yeah, let's not talk about it when we're training, like deal with it, like deal with guys. And I'm really, well, now I'm super interested in like, because I had this conversation with Jeski not too long ago, where it was kind of like, especially in 2016, actually, like in that, or and even before, how there was like an older culture of like, especially on dudes, like guys yelling at each other. Like if you passed a free ball, dear God, if you passed it, especially as a middle, you pass a free ball over the
mhm.
net or something, guys are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you can't do that shit. Like really in their face about it. And on one hand, it's like, I love this idea of if you can respect, like genuinely respect everyone. I love that personally. I
Mm.
think it can be a healthy thing to do. Like get it out there, hold someone accountable in using your authentic language in the way you feel, but it only works if it's like a mutual respect for one another and
Respect
not
and
like,
trust. Yeah.
yes, and not just like I don't like you off the court and I'm going to give you shit on the court. And that's the problem I see sometimes is it's like there's always, every team I've ever been on, there's always one or two guys that maybe the most of the team, or most guys are just like, dude, I don't fucking like this guy. He's annoying or whatever it is. And you see this like passive aggressiveness instead of just being like, hey, I don't know, maybe being like, yo, I think you're annoying. Like,
Yeah.
let's solve
Yeah.
this because I got to be with you for the rest of this year. Like, let's find a healthy balance in our relationship and be okay being like, not everyone's for everyone and the year ends, but like, but I hate the like background scene drama. It's like, fucking deal with it, dude. If you got a
Mhm.
problem, deal with it. If someone doesn't respect you, go ask them what's going on. We had that.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say what I'm not okay. One of my years, we had that problem where there was like the younger guys on the team were getting picked on by the older guys. And finally I had to have a conversation like with the older guys, like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is like not I don't know, like a fraternity. Like, what's going on? Like, and maybe it's a cultural thing, right? Where it's like, oh, the
Mhm.
older guys like give the younger guys shit because they're like figuring it out or whatever. And I'm just like, yo, that's not cool with me. And you look at that with the national team where it was like, when you were a younger guy, for me, eighth middle, it's like I mopped floors for a long time, like wet spots basically. Guy, dives on the floor. I'm out there with the little towel, just wiping it up, like minding my own. Like, and now things are changing a little bit. And on one hand, you have to be careful with those who feel like entitled. I feel like there's sometimes you see a younger generation where maybe there's some entitlement. But on the other hand, I don't like the traditional, just like I'm the older guy, you need to respect me, whatever. It's like, this is just me. I wish it was just like, yo, we're all humans. We're all figuring it out. And some of us are at very different stages. Some of us are 20 and like there's so much you're going to learn. And some of you are 34 and you need to teach them some lessons. And maybe it's harsh sometimes, but like have the conversation, you know?
Yeah. And one thing we did well on the national team, since there was a little bit of that in the past, even down to who gets what bag when we travel on the road, to tournaments. I think in the past it used to be if you're older, you get your first pick and you choose like the bag that's the best, or you don't even get a bag at all to carry. An extra like, team bag or something.
Hmm.
But now we play like rock, paper, scissors. And if you win and you're on the upper part of the winning bracket, you get to choose first. And if you're at the bottom, you choose last. And everyone of all age groups are in that line. So it's not like if you're young, you're carrying this. And if you're older, you're
Honestly,
not carrying a bag,
I hate that so much, to be honest with you.
I know,
Like
but
go
it
against
had
everything I just said. I hate it so much.
it had to be down to that level to where it's like just because you're older, you just can't do whatever you want. Like they wanted to
Interesting.
break it down to that like minimal,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah. I
that
mean,
little
in
thing.
in some way that's really cool. In another way, I do think there's something like it is cool about like that little sense of community where there's like older and younger and like the younger guys have to maybe like set up the nets or like for me the only reason I like it is because it's like I remember when I was the guy wiping the
Mhm.
floor for the older guys. I remember when I was the guy setting up the nets for the older when I was on the young guy and for my varsity high school team was like setting up nets or something like
Yeah.
there's something really interesting about that. But to your point too, I think there's something also really cool about being like this is a team. We don't care about your age or whatever. Like no one gets special treatment here. Like everyone's getting treated like a person, and we're all on an equal playing field. That's an interesting idea. I don't know. And how did you like it? Especially as you became one of the older ladies.
Well, obviously I liked it coming in. I was like, cool, I'm not getting stuck with the bad bags. And then since I didn't know any differently, I was fine with it, especially if I was obviously on like the winning bracket. And if I wasn't, I was like, okay, it is what it is. I have a bad bag choice, bad hand of, draw.
Mm,
Um, but there were certain things that still allowed older athletes to be older athletes and the younger ones to be younger ones. But I think it based on what the girls that came before me have learned, they like that. So I didn't know any differently, but it felt like I guess a safe environment and way of doing things.
mm. I guess that's cool. And I think like I said, I think everyone is slowly figuring it out, like and I can imagine like 20 or 30 years ago, like no one was doing that. Like
No,
no one
definitely
was
not.
doing that. So it's cool because we're
Yeah.
learning and experimenting with different things.
Yeah.
Um, by the way, if you're short on time or anything, let me know.
No,
If
I'm
you
good. I'm just
Yeah.
like, did we get some good stuff in this hour? Because I want to keep talking to you. And if we
No, we're
didn't, like,
going. Dude, we're going.
go.
There's no time limit for me. I
Okay, let's
I blocked
go.
off my evening post training
I'm
just to
here.
kick it. Well, okay, I'm really interested in we've talked a lot just about like your mentality and how things changed and how you've like learned some great tools that you use to help you succeed. I'm really curious, like where did that play into when you were injured? I remember that
Mhm.
that summer, but then that winter where it was you, me, there was a handful of us who were injured, which that was cool because at least we had like our community of injured
We
players.
had a huge community. We
Yeah,
had
but
shoulders,
probably
we had
too big, unfortunately. But
too big, unfortunately. Yeah, definitely. Well, I would definitely
and just to
if
be, can
I
you got surgery on your
on my
knee,
left
right?
knee. Yeah, so there was no defining injury. Normally people like go down ACL, MCL, something happens, they get carried off the court. But literally, mine was I came back from one of my seasons in Monza. It was my first day back on the national team. And I was like, my knee feels a little bit weird. And I pulled out my knee pad and it was swollen. And I asked the court trainer that was there, she was an in-house, like, hey, can you look at my knee? It's a little bit swollen. She's like, hey, go in and take it to Kara. So I went into the training room that's like, a long walk away. And she's like, your knee's swollen. And that was the beginning of my weird injury. So I ended up just having, what did I have? So
Did you tear your patella tendon?
no, I didn't tear my patella. I just had like deteriorating cartilage. So I had some
Uh,
deteriorating cartilage and some um shredding of my meniscus. So there wasn't any injury. It was literally just like deterioration of my knee. Like, hey, you're getting old.
hmm,
But the thing is they couldn't get the swelling down. And that was
hmm.
my thing. And so we tried these things. And so I ended up getting surgery to go in to see if there was some cartilage pieces floating around and to just smooth down my meniscus. And my knee was okay, but then COVID happened. It can continue to swell. And so, yeah, that was my journey. But,
And so the rehab for you was how long?
um,
Because you didn't lose, you did a back half
I just had to
contract?
clean up. So I had signed a contract in Japan before my surgery. And so I had to let that go.
Hmm.
And then the year after COVID, I signed a half year in Turkey. And I just didn't like the way just the treatments were going. And I was like, the Olympics are coming up and I want to be in a good situation. And so I left halfway to go back to Anaheim and I trained and just got healthy. But, you know, just when the staff met, they just said I wasn't healthy enough, fast enough. So that was my journey with like the injury and everything.
And what was that like for you not having volleyball? Like what did you do?
Like when I was injured.
Yeah, what did you do?
So for me, I was able to just dive into like, who am I without volleyball? I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do at this time? I remember my friend came to help me after surgery. She's like, well, let's make a list of things you're going to do and things that you couldn't do if you were playing volleyball.
Dude,
And so I
Rachel's
did
bucket
all,
list. Oh my
yeah, it was
God.
like a little Rachel's bucket list.
Yeah.
So, I dived more into being like an influencer and seeing what that's about, and like did some photo shoots and, um, I was, visiting people that I never got to visit because, I couldn't make just a quick trip to Seattle when I'm playing volleyball over the weekend with the national team or fly out to San Francisco. So I got to visit a lot of people that I didn't get to visit. But for me, there were sad moments, but I chose to have the mindset that I'm just going to give everything that I have. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not
Mm.
going to be the end of the world. So I try to just set myself up for the best case scenario, like just making sure I'm doing all my rehab, making sure I'm eating right, and trying to set myself up for you know, for the thing that I want to happen,
Yeah.
but it's out of my control. So I try to just explore more of like who I am, and then at the same time, just give it everything that I had.
Such like a healthy adult way to look at that.
Yeah.
I
But there
only
were,
yeah.
yeah, no, you keep going, keep going.
No. The only reason I brought that up too is because, and again, this is my own pride. I feel like I've talked about these things on other podcasts too, but I struggled a lot. I went through the first time I've ever felt like an actual depression was that year. And
Yeah.
I lived in Manhattan Beach, Porto, basically on the beach. And after like 3 or 4 months post surgery, I could kind of surf and was like surfing all the time and was like so depressed and was like, who the fuck am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
And what's ironic is like I never saw myself as like this volley nerd, like I'm just a volleyball player. And I finally had to accept that like it's a huge part of my identity. And that's why I had brought it up, asked you, and like what a great thing you and I, I tried stand-up comedy for a little bit and like tried to dive into some other things,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
super super fun, and I loved having that moment. But I still like, and I'm curious how you feel, like especially as athletes who you said before are like really self-critical and perfectionistic. Perfectionistic, is that a
Mhm.
word?
Perfectionist.
Perfectionist.
Perfectionistic.
Yeah,
Like
wow.
futuristic.
Sick, dude. Sick new word. As such perfectionists, and I I feel like for me it's like whatever I do, I just go like 100%. And sometimes I can go 100% in the wrong direction with my mind. And so what I loved hearing about what you said is like you've somehow managed to like keep this like pretty solid head on your shoulders throughout the tough times in your career. I want to know, like, do you attribute that to something, or
Um,
like do you have a vice? Like do you ever just like get mad and like because the way you
yeah.
describe him, just like damn, you're just such like a like I wish that I had your brain sometimes. I could just
No, but
flip on
I'm
my
not
Rachel, dude.
yeah, I'm not perfect at all, and I do go through moments, like, I feel like I was pretty steady and level-headed, like, when I found I had to get surgery and they're like, "Hey, we can't rehab the swelling out," I was like, "All right, let's get surgery, like, let's do it," and I didn't have, like, a moment of kinda getting into a dark place until it was, like, closer to the Olympics, and, like, I was finally out on the court again, and I did something to where, like, maybe some cartilage chipped off again, and it was really, like, jarring to where I was like, "This is painful, like, what just happened?"
Mm,
And people around the weight room were, like, talking to me like, "I'm done," like, "Hey, we heard what happened." I'm like, What is this? Like, am I what" like, "Is this the
mm,
end?" And so it just kind of set me back into like a darkish place. And, I really wasn't sure like what was next. And so I do remember crying a lot during that. Um, but and not knowing what was going to happen or if when this moment was going to pass, because there was like a good week to where like my knee was just like weird, but then it
mm,
did pass. And then I had like some weird thing in my calf, and then one thing after the another. But I did end up like getting out of that place. But there's been place like moments during my career where I've been in a dark place. But I feel like things that help me is like I'm just really good at like being in my emotions. But what is a strength is also like a weakness of mine.
mm,
It's like I'm very in touch with myself and how I feel, but I'm not very good at hiding it.
mm,
Like if I'm feeling one way, I can be, I guess you could say like moody. Like if I'm not, in a great place or I didn't get a lot of sleep, like maybe people can tell. And that what makes me kind of like be a little bit more standoffish. Like, okay, I don't want to like put this bad energy onto people. And I know, like you said, like we didn't get to really know each other until like our injuries and we were in a small group.
yeah.
And so I'm curious to like, what I'm saying now is like, did you see this like as my like characteristic before you really got to know me? Cause I know I can be like very misunderstood with the way I am. Cause I'm very, I never want to really be the center of attention, but if I'm one-on-one with people, like I want to share, I want to go deep and I want to like talk about
Yeah.
things that are past surface level, but I'm not going to be like the person in the group that's like, listen to me, what I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't think that far about it. I just knew, like, yeah, from the beginning, I just felt like, oh, I can just continue to be myself around you, and like we
Yeah,
can talk about like how are we really doing. It wasn't just like, oh, how are you?
exactly.
Like, oh, I'm great, and we're gonna. It was like sometimes having like real conversation, and I think that's what I cherish the most, and it's what's helpful for me to recognize that like I'm not alone in that. Not that I'm like going around searching for it, but when I see someone who's willing to be vulnerable, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have a great time together, because
Exactly.
we also had a lot of fucking fun, like there's that I need all of it. So it's like when I have fun, like your boy's trying to have fun. And when I was younger, I was a wild kid, like, and we've grown a lot in that way. And I'm slowly taming myself and hopefully what I think is a really a healthy way. But can I ask you something just like And if it's too personal or blunt,
Yeah,
just you
yeah.
don't have to answer it.
Right.
What was it like not going to the Olympics
It was
in
definitely
2020,
yeah,
2021?
in 2020, like obviously being in the Olympics, knowing how that feels, and then to not going to Olympics, I would say it was definitely an array of emotions. Obviously, I could say I got into a place where it was dark because you have your mind focused on one thing, but you also know it may not go right. It may not happen. And so obviously I was just so focused on getting healthy because, the thing was like a healthy Rachel is a good Rachel. And I just wanted to put myself in the place to be able to compete for a spot. And I never really got a chance because I was deemed as not healthy enough to do so.
Mm,
And so that was really hard for me. And just trying to figure out, okay, like that is over.
mm,
Um, but I know at the core of everything, I just wanted to be able to like, if it is a no, no, I gave everything. And I
mm.
know I gave everything that I could, like show up as a version that I wanted to be for my teammates around me, and showed up to rehab and training in every way that I could, and, put everything that I have. So that's the thing that I wanted to be able to walk away with, and saying like, I know I gave everything, but still hearing that no, it was difficult. Like hearing the no is never easy, and you want to join your team at the Olympics and obviously be a part of a gold medal. But I do feel that it just wasn't meant for me. Maybe as cliche, or maybe as like, okay, you're just saying that because you didn't go. But I think it just wasn't meant for me. And I often think like, I don't know, my body was protecting me in a way, because right now my knee is fine. As soon as
Mm,
I got after Olympics, like I was in Brazil, like I'm playing and it's fine. Like
yeah.
I talked to someone who helped me heal my knee while I was here in Cincinnati. Like when I came back, I was like, why wasn't my knee like that before the Olympics? And he's like,
What?
sometimes, huh?
No, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, he was just like, sometimes just environments just aren't meant for you, and your body is going to know that before you do.
That's crazy. Can you go more into that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I'm getting like emotional, but some environments just aren't meant for you. And I think it just wasn't an environment like meant for
Mm,
me.
mm.
In the sense as fitting in with the culture or the people around me, and it being like a safe space, like for me personally.
You're talking about on the Olympic team or like in
Yeah.
that summer? Well,
Yeah.
hey,
Just that summer.
dude, I want to cry with you. I really appreciate you being like honest like this. It's fucking cool. And like, hey, I hear you. I also like for
Yeah.
me, I didn't go to the Olympics in 2021, and I never even had a taste of it, Like I never
Yeah.
went before, and I'm still searching for one. And like, and that was also hard because like instantly you go into like, well, like, and I also had injury that held me back. I ruptured my plantar fascia like 5 weeks before they were making the decision, like I have my excuses, and it's
Yeah.
so hard. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about that environment. And something I think that's so cool that you're doing now is recognizing that there's a lot in your physical environment that can actually alter. And by physical environment, I mean like your community and like
Yeah.
the where are you in the world? What's your team dynamic? Like there's so many things. But if you can hone in and lock down your mental environment and work on that muscle,
Yeah.
the physical environment doesn't matter as much as you think it does. It does. Like I could make excuses, right? Like for me, our gym is right now. I'm in Poland. Like our gym is fucking cold, dude. Like we've had so many little injuries, and like myself included, a little bit. I've got this like quad tendonitis that won't go away, and I'm just like, what is going on? And it's like it's cold in the gym. It's hard for my joints as I get older
Yeah.
to like stay warm, and I'm just like, I can make a million excuses, And I'm trying so hard to also work on myself and work on my mental environment and be like, yo, you chose to come here. I
Hmm.
look at my time in Hawaii. It's like, damn, I miss when I went to University of Hawaii, and like you just walk into the gym and your body's warm, dude. And you're
Warm.
young. Like,
Brazil was so warm.
oh,
It
I
was
know when you said
so
Brazil, I
nice.
literally felt my body warming up,
It
dude.
was so nice. Yeah. No, definitely. And I definitely feel like environment play a lot into how you feel and how you play. And definitely for me, just I think not just like volleyball wise, but just like relationship wise,
Mm,
it just wasn't really a space for me. Um, Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes it just
Well,
wasn't a space for me. And I feel like your body knows like where you feel good and where you're, kind of accepted. And this is a space that's just like healthy for you.
mm, and by relationship, you mean just like teammate, coaches, the whole dynamic, or
Yeah, just the whole
yeah,
dynamic,
yeah, it's
obviously
hard,
it's hard. Team
dude.
dynamics are
I
hard.
get it. Yeah,
Sometimes, you know, you're not going to be friends with everyone. And sometimes there is a space where this is what the coach wants and this is the type of person the coach wants, and that's okay if it's not you. That's not what you can control. And like,
yeah.
I tried to, show up and be the best person, the best teammate that I could be. um and sometimes you can be, misunderstood, and maybe it's just not the environment and the place for you. And for me at the time it just wasn't, and that's okay.
And this is why I'm just going to keep hitting it on the head. Like, this is why I think the mental environment is so important. Why it's
Mm,
so important to like go on YouTube and do research, go get
yeah.
self-help books, like find people. Like, the problem I always had with self-help stuff is like sometimes it's like too on the nose and too cringy and whatever. So to
Yeah.
me, like self-help looks different. Like I have a different route to what I is helpful and useful to me, but it all
Mm,
circles back to the same shit, dude. My
yeah.
brother will never meditate, but I got him into surfing like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's meditation to me. It's like you
It
find
is.
ways that work for you, but like understand right now it's so important. And maybe you're 15 or 16 or 18 or whatever, and like I wasn't really thinking about any of that. You're the time of your life, baby. You're playing great.
Yeah.
Your body's like friggin' Gumby. You can go forever. Like, life's great. But you get older and you realize, like, man, what I wish I would have done. It's the same story that's been passed around all of lifetime. Like, what I wish I would have known when I was younger.
Right? And just
And
even about yourself, because like, storms, situations are going to come attack you, but how mentally strong are you to be able to navigate those? How well do you know yourself to be able to navigate that? Like when something comes to attack your character or who you are, or something that you're not used to, like how mentally strong or how well do you know yourself to be like, okay, that's coming at me, but I'm going to choose to react like this, or I'm going to choose to show up like this. And, looking back at so many situations, like you're like, I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have known how to like set this boundary. I wish I would have known to just pick this route. Can you relate to that? Is that what you're kind of talking about?
yeah, and I also think that self-discipline doesn't come easy to everyone.
Mm,
And I think sometimes in life, like, you need a moment. Some of us have moments. Like for me, I was kicked off my second Division 1 team at Hawaii, like kicked off at UC Irvine, kicked off at Hawaii, to have that moment of like, it's now where I go to Canada.
mm,
And that was my moment of like, all right, we're all in. We're all in on my grades. We're all in on my diet. We're all in on working out. And I was just a fucking animal waking up every morning, just gobbling it up. And it changed my life forever. And like now I'm, with the national team coach who kicked me off when I was 18. It's like life comes all the way around. But
yeah.
that was my defining moment of like, I need to start taking my shit serious, like, and really honing in on it. And the difference is like, I had a community. I had a trainer who took me in under his wing, and talk about mentor. Like, I had a mentor who took me under his wing. I had a community of dudes too, who actually got kicked off the team as well. And like one other guy, and like Nick Costello. And we just like worked out together. And that's where You Won't started. It was like, we would just kind of like talk shit, or like, oh yeah, you probably can't show up to the workouts a little early for you. Or like, we found like, I found that language of just like, oh, this is fun. And like, it can be me. It doesn't have to be this, like, you have to wake up and journal and have your coffee. And like, and for some people it works. And sometimes I go back to that. Like for me,
Mhm.
it's ever changing. It's not just, well, this is the one thing I know me now. It's like, me changes, dude. And I think
Always.
always, and that's the part that it's like, accept that about you, accept the newness, accept the change, and be looking for tools and strategies to handle it. And I just think it's so important that people understand that, yo, these resources are out for you. Like, if you're having a hard time or you're struggling, like, when I first started putting stuff out on social media, it's like, I was like, DM me, see what happens, like, I want to help. And I did for a while, but then, a lot of kids ask kind of the same questions that were like, how do I jump higher and do this kind of shit? And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, okay. But like, there were people who I reached out to me, and I'm just like, I'm so happy to help, man. Like, I want people to know that, like, that doesn't stop. The growth hopefully doesn't stop. And when you feel like it's stopped, like, That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's like the beautiful thing is like, and that is why I started, not that because I started in high school, but I just love learning about myself, why I do what I do and how I can react differently and how I can show up differently. And just like you said, it does come from a lot of just moments that you don't want to happen, moments that you don't want to be in that are defining and make you really look in and be like, all right, something has to change.
Mm,
You know?
mm.
Like, you can't keep showing up like this, and, um, unfortunately, no one wants to go through a moment, but I feel like it kinda has to happen, and you have options. You see the options in front of you and be like, "Hey, either I stay the same or it's time to change."
100%. And all I was trying to say earlier too is just like, hey, if you're the kind of person that thinks you can handle it all on your own, that's great. And some of us
Mhm.
can for a little bit. That was
Yeah.
me. I was like, I didn't need anyone waking me up at 6. I was so determined because for me, it was life and death. It was like, I have this 6 months to like redefine myself physically and hope they'll let me back on the team, even though they just kicked me off. Like, it wasn't even for sure, you know? But like, I
Yeah.
had the motivation and it worked for a while. And then I got older and it worked so well that I was like, "Oh, I don't need to now meditate every day." Cause I was breath work stuff. I was eating good, like all those things. I just was owning them, loving it. Nah, I can't do this. I'm going to bed. Like I didn't give a shit. I was just like, I'm doing me, dude. I'm going back. And I did. And I'm proud of myself for that. But the truth is also, then you get comfortable. Then now I'm back on the team. Oh, now I'm doing this. And oh, now I'm playing well. And oh, now I'm going pro. I'm going straight from, college to the best league in the world in Italy. Like, oh, things
Mhm.
are great. And then some of those things start to slip. And that's where I think like invest in yourself, and like I have a business mentor. I have a therapist, a new one actually I just started working with who's got a way different way of kind of like running his stuff. And like at first it was like, I don't need a therapist. Like I'm actually doing great. Like life is great. Like I love myself. But I'm still like, I know there's more in me. I don't know
Mhm.
there's a place for me to dive deeper. And I want to do that now and not wait till I'm 50 and look back on my
Yeah.
life and be like, oh, I wish I would have done that different, or I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have cared more here. And you
Yep.
totally said it. It's like, okay, you didn't go to the Olympics. Great. Now let's look back and be like, how many times were you kind of injured but did nothing about it? Like how often
Mhm.
did you like show up into the weight room and you just like didn't feel like doing it, so you did nothing? Or like you half-assed it when like you could have been like had tools to be like, oh, okay, maybe I can't do this. I'm gonna pivot and work on this or something. Or like there's just so many solutions out there. And
Yep.
to your point, it's like if you give everything, like it's the it's always easier to say this than it is to embody it. That I know from experience. But it's just at least you can sleep good on it, and be like, I
Yeah,
gave I
and
gave
yeah,
everything. It's gonna be
I
tough for me
gave
to
everything.
swallow. It's not gonna be easy to
Yeah.
be like, didn't go to the Olympics. Okay, all good. I gave everything. Like, no, it's still hard. But like at least you
Yeah.
can embody. And that's what I feel from you. It's like, I mean, you start getting really emotional. It's like you gave everything. I love
Yeah.
that. That's
And
it.
that's I think I would have a harder time being able to look back and be like, "Man, I wish I woulda showed up differently or done something differently than not going to Olympics." I think the heartbreak would be bigger if I could have done something.
Mm,
And so, like you said, I'm gonna do the research. I'm gonna see like what can I be doing now? What can I do in this moment to where I have no regrets? And so I even ask myself in this life, like, what do I want to be doing now so I have no regrets later in this life? Like, what am I what fear, like, what am I not doing because of fear? Fear of what
mm,
people think, fear of, if I might mess up or if I look stupid, am I not doing because of fear that I will regret later in this life? And that's what I'm doing now. So that's why I'm like running full force to into this mentorship, wanting to create a community, wanting to show up more online because I don't want to have any regrets, even though, it's not easy to show up on the internet because people are judging you every now and then be like, what is she doing? Or what is that information that they're sharing? But I'd rather have them say that than me look back years from now and be like, man, I wish I would have showed up.
I want to dive into a little bit of your transition to taking a small break from volleyball.
Mhm.
I am really curious though, when you were playing, like you were in a long distance relationship before you got married to your husband. Like you
Mhm.
were in a long distance relationship for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was that like? Because I've also like in my years had girlfriends in the past that we did distance, and like I'm really curious, like what was that experience like for you doing distance as a pro volleyball player?
I would say, it was good, but it was unique amongst like my situation compared to my other teammates' situation. So I didn't really have too much to relate to when it came to people that are in close proximity to me. Because if you look at many of the national team women, all their husbands live with them overseas.
Mm.
And I would get frustrated by that sometimes, like, like, why are you not here? He's like, do you want me to like quit my job and move with you and come and live with you whatever country you're in? I'm like, well, no, but we were on the same page is that like we are gonna pour everything that we can into this athletic career while we can, and know that what we have is going to be waiting for us at the end of that journey. Unfortunately, things like COVID happened to where Japan's borders are the last ones to open. They didn't open until Aug- October.
And for those of
October.
you who don't know, your husband is a professional basketball player.
Yeah, my husband's a professional basketball player. This is his sixth season in Japan. And it wasn't until October that the borders opened. So even when I wasn't playing volleyball, I couldn't even get into Japan and he couldn't get out because he was in season. So I would say long distance was tough at moments, like you're frustrated because like you don't want to be in it. You're over FaceTime, you're over texting, and you just like want to be with each other. But I think our guiding light is that it's worth it for us, that what we have waiting for us at the end of this journey is worth the wait, worth the frustration, worth, this distance.
I mean, clearly you
Yeah,
married the man.
clearly I married the man and I'm happy. And
Yeah,
I
that's
knew,
cool.
and it's so nice to be able to sit in this situation now, knowing like, okay,
It
this is
was worth it.
everything. It was worth it. Like
Yeah,
I'm happy we made it. Everything was worth
yeah,
it. And I envision that moment like on the days where I'm just like, this is so frustrating. Like I'm sick of FaceTime. I'm
yeah,
sick of messaging, like I'm over WhatsApp.
yeah. Was there anything you guys did to like spice it up or stay more in touch? Or because I got that too, where it's just like, yo, like I know I
Yeah.
and what's hard is like you have a hard day, and this is crazy because both of you are training. Like there's
Yeah.
something also about like being physically exhausted. Like we had a weight session this morning and a practice this afternoon. I was dead, and luckily like talking with you like gave me energy, so now I'm not as tired as I was, so thank you for that. But like I'm exhausted. It's like, dang, I don't want, like, sometimes it's like it's not even her fault. It's like I don't even want to talk today. I'm just done. I need
Yeah.
to like zone out and just like go to bed soon because I'm just gassed.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
the good thing about what we had is we were both professional athletes. So we understood the grind. And
mm,
so we weren't really offended by being like, hey, it is late. I'm going to bed early. Like I can't talk right now. And that's okay.
mm,
But obviously we keep in touch as much as we can, but we do respect like, hey, and don't take offense. Like I'm so tired today. Like I can't even talk, or like
mm,
I'm just gonna like watch Netflix and not do anything.
mm. Yeah. Do you being on playing so many years overseas, did you notice like were other girls struggling with long distance relationship stuff?
Um,
Or were you like the only one?
I was like the only one.
That's crazy.
Everyone,
Okay.
everyone else's husbands were living with them overseas.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Just trying.
knew,
Yeah.
yeah, but what was also important about that is like, yes, I wish he could be living with me now, but I know like what we're building, like even just financially wise,
Mm,
like the full incomes that we're both bringing in now that we get to like unite at the end, and like the money that can go to houses and our family in the future, like it's gonna be worth it. And we were just like financially focused on things like that. I mean, even to the point where, a lot of my teammates, bought nice cars and houses, and I just wanted to do Airbnbs and write it off and like rent a car, like I just didn't get
mm,
to like do some full experiences like that because I knew like, okay, the big picture is down the road, like sacrifice now and get to live later. So
mm.
that was definitely a lot of just our focus is like we're sacrificing now so we can like enjoy later.
Must be nice to make that women's volleyball contract money too, dude. That's pretty tasty. You're talking about Airbnbs. I'm over here just trying to pay for lunch. So that's cool. No, I'm kidding. That's really interesting. Sometimes I'm like, oh, she like, you're another person who did like, I knew who did like long distance relationship. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I wonder if there's like a community. So if you out there listening and you do a long distance relationship, send us a message. I'm curious. Cause sometimes I'm like, am I the only one? Or like, are there other people who have done distance or are doing distance? Like, is it tough for them? Because I've gone through my personal struggles with it and had a past relationship that didn't work out. And a big part of it is like the expectations too, when they like come to see you. There's like, I know for
Mm,
me, it was like, this was a long time ago. An ex like came to see me at, like came to be with me for an extended amount of time. But then it was kind of like, what are you like? They're just home. And I didn't want that. I want someone who's also, like there's this,
yeah.
like, you want to see them doing them. Like you want to see whoever you're with, like loving what they're doing and going down a path and you being a part of their life in that way. But I
Yeah.
can imagine
No.
it's so hard, like in that sense, where then roles change and reverse. And
Well, absolutely. And that's what I'm in right now. Cause now I'm like a basketball wife, like staying at home while he's in
dang,
Japan.
yeah.
Yeah. So being a former athlete, now supporting an athlete, I thought a lot about it. I'm like, well, what's that going to be like? Like, is it going to make me miss sports? Is it going to, I don't know, I don't know, activate something within me,
And
but it hasn't. And I enjoy what I do. But one thing that he also said was just like, I don't see you as just like a stay at home person. Like, I know you're going to be chasing your dreams, like
yeah,
mentorship, or, I started a YouTube channel just following my journey here in Japan. Like,
yeah.
I'm very active. Like, he's like, I don't just see you staying at home, like doing nothing. Like, obviously you're here and I love your support and everything, but like, I know you're going to be doing a lot. But
Mm,
it's also one of the hardest things for me is like having so much time and like having the opportunity to do nothing.
yeah.
I get like I've got flustered one time when he's like, "What did you do today?" And I was like, "Are you judging me? Are you saying that I'm not doing anything?" I would take it so personally. He's like, "I'm not even saying that." But
Hey,
like I feel like you're judging me like I'm not doing enough. Cause like we're so used to doing so much. And now that I can be like, I'm just gonna stay at home today and do
can,
nothing.
can I ask you, how do you handle doing nothing? You cool with
And
that? Like, is it cool? Is you good with it?
in the beginning, it was weird because normally we have so many practices, we have videos, we have this, and we only have to manage maybe 2 hours of our lives
Hmm.
each day, maybe like
Yeah,
the hour after first practice and
yeah,
like the 2 hours after our
yeah,
evening practice. And you're
yeah,
like, okay, how do I want to manage this? And now I have to manage a whole day
yeah.
in a foreign country.
Wow.
And it was really hard at first. I'm like, well, how do I do this? Like, when do I want to work out? The day just blew by. Am I doing stuff? Am I being productive? It's weird.
Yo, you bring up a really interesting. You're so right. And my girlfriend gives me shit all the time where she's like, you basically have someone write your schedule and you just show up to the thing they like. You don't have to manage
Yeah.
the rest of it. You can do whatever you want. And I know that because now I'm trying to do this podcast, have an academy. I got a lot of things going, trying to have more of a presence and doing a lot of different things where I'm just like, now I feel like there's never enough time,
Right.
and I have the worst organization skills. So I'm curious from you, like, what's that you described? It's like, all right, you go from your life is basically scheduled for you and you've lived that way for 15 years or however long, like a long time. And now all of a sudden it's like you wake up and Rachel, no one's telling you to do anything. You can do whatever
Not
you
a
want.
thing.
So what
Not
do
a
you like? How are you managing it all?
So I had to like download, it's been a learning curve, but I had to download some stuff, where I can type in my schedule. And so I met with like this mentor with like productivity and stuff. And she's like,
Hmm.
well, first, do you even know where your time is going? I said, no. She's like, you need to track where your time is going so you can just see what you're doing during the day.
What
So
does that
if
look
it's
like?
like, well, when I was talking with her, it was going towards like building my website and working out.
No, I mean
And
like track. When she says track it, what does
oh,
that look like?
so I downloaded this thing where, you can click start on the time you're working on something. Maybe I'm working on building a website and I'm doing that. So I type in, I don't know, administration, building website, and I click start. And then it tracks, makes a box like you've been working on this for 3 hours and like, okay, lunch, start. And then, you can look at your day
Wait,
with
this
like,
is sick, dude. What's it called?
Um, let's see.
Because that's the part that I have the hardest time with is like, and I'm trying to work on now. Before it was like, dude, how many times I work with this business coach? How many times I'm just like, man, this is a week, dude. I gotta really start using my Google Calendar and like really showing up for the things I put in there. And like some
Yeah.
days it's like I do pretty good, and then some days it's just like I don't do it, and then it's like, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I would have, and the amount of times I've said that. So I'm like constantly looking for a way where it's like, let's find something you can stick to.
Yeah. So I have this program called Sunsama. You do have to pay, but you get to test it out for, I don't know, 20 days or something. So I gave it a try and it was really productive. And
Interesting.
so I'm looking at it
Sunsama.
now.
I'm writing it down. How do you spell it?
Yeah. Sunsama.
Sunsama.
Yeah. And it connects with your Google Calendar. It connects with
That's
so,
sick.
yeah. And so it plugs in things that you have on your Google Calendar into your like daily to-do list. And then it
Cool.
makes like a productivity list at the end.
That's cool.
But I just needed to have a visual about like, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to plan my day?
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's free flowing. But, you know, as I go for my goals and as I go for stuff, you know, I also have this athlete mindset that's like achieve, do, because we're always
Mhm.
trying to like make our bodies better, make our nutrition better,
Mm.
sleep better. And so I have this mindset as I'm creating my mentorship and this other stuff. And so, but you don't get the immediate feedback as you do with as an athlete. Like,
Interesting.
as an athlete, like you can work on your wrist away and you're like, okay, I got it. Like I'm doing good. But when you're trying to show up on social media or just show up and create a community better, you're not getting that immediate feedback. No one's being like, hey, like you're improving. Like, okay, you can look at numbers, but that doesn't really always paint the biggest picture. So I think the hardest part for me outside of sports is getting that immediate feedback that what I'm doing is improving
Really interesting.
and I'm improving with what I'm trying to go for as my goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine like that process. Like, can you walk me through a little bit? Like, so you're working on your website and you're just like, all right, I spent an hour or so working on this, and you're just kind of left like, okay, guess I did
Well,
good.
for example, even just something as simple as social media, like you're trying to put content out there that's um, informative or valuable. And for example, like when you message me, you're like, you're doing so good. I'm like, well, why isn't anyone on the internet? If you think that, tell me that before so I could know. Cause like not everyone's just telling you like, wow, that was such a good piece of content to like scroll like, oh, in their head, like, oh, that's cool. Scroll. I'm like, how about when you think it's cool, tell me. But obviously people don't need to do that. But you
Yo.
don't get that like, okay, I just had a great wrist away. Like that's a point. Like I'm getting better at
Mm.
that. So
First of all,
that's
wait,
where
let me say that real quick. I empathize with that so much where it's hard. Yeah, dude, I'm so on your back on this. Like I couldn't feel, I'm totally right there with you, because sometimes what people don't see is like, man, it takes a lot of time to make this content. Even something that looks simple. And you just like, for me, it's even the posts I do for Tallest Podcast on Earth. It's like, I get people all the time, like we just played a team, a Polish team, and like one of the teammates from the other team was like, dude, my mom loves your podcast. And I was like, that makes me feel so good. Why does no one,
exactly
I get
that.
like, no one ever really just like I get them randomly, but I'm just like, and it's so important to encourage each other that way. And also for me, like not to rely on the noise, and to
Oh,
really
for
hone
sure.
in on like, why am I doing this? But to your point, it's like, yeah, we want a little bit of like that positive reinforcement right away too, because it's like, hey, I just spent, an hour, whatever, writing this caption and editing this thing. So it was like a good piece of content that was hopefully helpful or useful or sparked some thought in you that changed the way you looked at something or whatever it is. And then you realize like someone looked at it, thought it was great, scrolled up to the next piece of fucking content, like
Yeah.
it's almost
I
humbling
mean,
in a way too.
yeah, exactly. Because my mission is like I want to encourage and inspire people, and that's why I share the stuff. But obviously they don't have to tell me that inspired them, encourage them. So when I do hear, I'm like, really? Like you enjoyed it, like
Yeah.
that helped you, like that means the most. So
Yeah.
the feedback that I'm looking for is not always there. So just being in comparison to an athlete where you know where to get your feedback, your progress, it's just different. And so you're like, am I doing anything? Am I make like what am
Hey,
I
and
doing?
so I'm putting this out there right now for those of you listening. Give some feedback, especially like for this podcast. Give me feedback. If you fucking hate it, let's talk about it. My mom says I swear too much. Okay, mom, I'm trying. I got this app. It's teaching me words. We're learning, like whatever. Like I'm growing. I'm putting it out there. And the same with you. It's like that stuff does go a long way. And for me, it's a great reminder because I know what I know about you for sure, because I also feel the same way. It's like when we're starting these mentorship, building these communities, it's like we care. And we also have a special connection because we're both middles, and middles understand volleyball and in very different ways than the rest of athletes on our team. Like we have a different type of community within the volleyball community, I feel like. And so like to me, it's something really special and I hold it so dearly, but then there's all these tasks you have to do to like put yourself out there. And all those things take a lot of time. And no one's paying you to make that 15-second Instagram content. And it's like, you don't care about the followers or anything. What you care about is sharing your message. What you
Mhm.
care about is like, hopefully someone hears it and maybe it changes their day. Someone sees your podcast, and we'll get this in a second, like or not your podcast, sorry, the Instagram page you have, the like journey and strength, like all that kind of stuff. It's like, it means so much to you, I can tell, because look at the quality of the stuff you put out too. It's like you're really thoughtful about the things you're doing and you really, really want to help, you know? And I just want that I'm grateful for that also. Like I'm so happy that it's so nice to see other athletes step up and do something that's helpful to our community. And I think especially in volleyball, it's like with a lot of these other sports, they've been around, they're talked to, they're on ESPN. There's like a lot going on. Basketball, God, like football, like all these like classic, just like sports that have been around forever. So it's so cool to see. Also, what like especially women's volleyball, I think, is making a huge like uprising. And so to be a part of the like an athlete that a lot of people respect, to be like putting themselves in a position to be vulnerable and to share and to offer themselves as a resource, I think it's really cool.
Thanks, Taylor.
I think it's amazing. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's honestly for me, I feel really good about this conversation. I'm like, I don't even want to take any more of your time. This was so great. I'm constantly curious about the transition from like, can I ask you, like, do you miss playing like at all right now? Or
Um,
are you
I
like,
don't know. I
okay?
have moments where, like I miss like having those moments of like making big blocks and even moments of just like defense and feeling like those touches. But then I'm just like thinking about myself transitioning and jumping and just moving. And I'm like,
You had me at transition, baby. I feel
I was,
that.
I was like, and then when I hear my husband get out of bed in the morning and you have that like the next game, that morning after the game, and you're like, oh, like that first walk in the morning, I'm like, yep, I don't miss that. But of course, there's moments where I miss my teammates and traveling on the bus. But for me, I was just more excited about what was next than where I was. And I thought about it long and hard when I was in Brazil. And one of the hardest things for me was just being long distance from my husband. And I was
Mm,
going to get married to him that summer. All my teammates were going back home after practice to their kids, their husbands, their family. And I was just going to an empty apartment. And I was like,
mm,
what's the motivation to keep doing this?
mm.
And for me, there wasn't one.
That's I mean, that's a really cool thing to be aware of. And I'm sure even though you make it sound like you're so good at just, all right, what's the next thing then? We're gonna be in this uncomfortable transition phase, and like
Yeah.
your ability to sacrifice this a part of it for your relationship. And like you make it sound like it's so easy, but I can imagine it's not. I can imagine it's
Yeah.
still hard. Like and the thing is, I get the same as I get older. It's like there's no clear, it's done, your time's
Yeah.
up. It's like that decision is always so difficult, I can imagine. So anytime I hear someone who's like even taking a break, like it's just like, what's it like? What's it like? I'm
Yeah.
coming there.
It's
I'm
never
gonna be there
easy.
soon.
Yeah, I know. And I reached out to other people on the other side. I'm like, guys, I'm thinking about doing a thing. how is it over there? Like, tell me, was it hard for you to make this?
Yeah.
I was asking the same things, and they helped me just like articulate my thoughts, not articulate my thoughts, but like sift through my thoughts and figure out what I really want to do. And one of the things that really helped me was one of my resources who also had a kid. She's like, you can come back at any time. If you go and you're like, hey, I'm not happy here, you can return. It's
Yeah.
not like the door is closed.
And
And she's like, I came back after a kid.
yeah.
I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
And
Like,
she balled out because she's a baller.
yeah, she's a baller. So she's like, that door is not closed. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're right. So
That's really
I was
cool.
like, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I find it admirable, because I know for so many athletes, it's such a, for those who have left, it's like, I'd be really interested in like, what did people say? Like, was there anything? Cause I like the common feedback, cause I know a handful of players who stopped playing, or they're just like, play as long as you can. And like,
mhm,
like I miss it all the time. And now I work this, 9 to 5 or something. And to me, it's just like, that's why I'm never trying to work out a 9 to 5. First of all, that's why I think having balance in your life is, and I
mhm,
talk about this all the time, I think is so important. Have other shit that you're interested in and not just volleyball, like,
exactly.
and pursue that, you know?
Yeah. And while
And
you're in sport, if you can,
that's what
because
I'm
I
talking
think the
about.
worst case
100%.
scenario is to decide that volleyball is over or it's forced to be over for you. And you're like, well, what are my other passions? What other things do I like?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get to that point. And that's why I dove in. I created Journey Strength in 2015, 16. And I just been diving into things ever since. And I
Mm,
know that, my platform isn't going to last forever. And I wanted to start what I wanted to do while I was in volleyball. So it wasn't like when volleyball is over and people forget about you and don't care what you're doing. And then I'm like, well, wait, actually, I want to start something.
mm,
So I wanted to start that before volleyball was over.
mhm.
And I always thought like about life after volleyball while I was playing volleyball. And I think you can relate to that. And I know
Yeah.
I don't want to do a 9 to 5. And luckily my husband is leading the way, like playing sports, and I can, do what I do while not having to be in a 9 to 5. But, I still want to follow my passions and I still want to have a purpose to lead the way.
Yeah, and it's also like I also have a friend who does work like a 9 to 5, and he like loves the stuff like the banking stuff he gets to do. Like that's
Yeah.
great too. But I think to your point, don't wait until you're done playing volleyball to then be
Yeah.
like, okay, who else am I? And it like breaks my heart when I see, and I know so many, I'm really curious also on the women's side. Like I know so many guys who they go home and they watch Netflix or they're playing video games or they're doing shit. And it's the same thing. It doesn't mean
Mhm.
they don't have other interests. Maybe they do, but they're not doing anything proactively to like really dive into like, yeah, I love drawing and I spend 2 hours
Mhm.
drawing. It's like, well, make
Yep.
something. Like, what? Let's start
Yeah.
getting into it. How can I help? Like, that's the other thing. I'm trying to offer my hand to you, to anyone else. Like, let's collaborate. And I'm saying this right
Yeah.
now publicly. Like, you and I, let's collaborate. Like, I
Yeah.
want to do that. It gives me so much joy to do that and to also build that part of our community as well as pros, because I think I also know a lot of pros who have no idea what they want to do when they're done.
No.
And the thing that scares me the most is I felt that way when I had that injury in 2018, where I'm like, oh my God, who am I outside of volleyball? Like I have all these, my problem is I have all these things I like. I'm such a curious cat by nature, where it's like, I don't have that one thing that like, yeah, I've never really told anyone, but I like, look at all these drawings I have, like I love drawing, where it's like, oh, whoa, you got this other thing. You're super passionate. I'm like so passionate about so many different things is a nightmare,
Yeah. I
but
think
like,
multi-passion, it's a good thing, but keep going.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah. I mean, for sure. And I'm 100%. And I guess my point is just like reach out, other athletes who are playing and they're curious about something, or they just like don't feel alone in that, because there's a lot of players who, and that's why I'm curious from you. Like there's a lot of people who transition and it can be a scary thing. Also,
Mhm.
like just the unknown, there's so much security and comfort in knowing you can go make a living, a very comfortable living playing a sport that you're damn good at, you know?
Yeah. And I want
And
to kind of add on two things. The thing is, like we both said, we don't want to be in a 9 to 5, and some people are enjoying it. But the fact that we know we don't want to, we've done that thinking,
mm,
we've done that research about ourselves, and we're like, hey, 9 to 5 is not for us. Could be for some other athlete when they retire, but we have kind of done that research about like, okay, well, what are we being drawn to? And the second thing to add to like that transition part and about my experience is like, it was like a mourning, like a loss, like a mourning the loss of something. Cause like when you end a relationship with someone, like they're no longer in your life. And I did have to like go through that phase of like, this thing is no longer in my life. And it was like like a true like transition, knowing like, okay, our time here is done. It's no longer going to be in my life anymore. And just like any other mourning the loss of something, it's a journey. But that's all I wanted to add. And
No, that's
so
beautiful.
maybe sometimes I speak about stuff like, oh, it's just so easy, but I do so much work in the background and so much reflection that maybe it seems like I'm speaking about it easy, but there's a lot of intention about like the things that I do and that allow me to look
Well,
and think about things in certain ways.
Well, and we talked about like having balance and being curious about something. And it sounds like from a young age, you were curious about you and you
Yeah.
invested in you and you spent your spare time diving deeper into you. And I think now it's paying off. And now you're realizing because you put all that time. And how often do we hear of guys who are just like, especially for men who don't want to be vulnerable, even with themselves, and they suppress emotions, and then they're done. And then they're like, now they have to work through so much more because they suppressed that side of them for so long. It's like, yo, just be you, be
Yeah.
vulnerable about it, be open about it, and like watch great things happen. Watch you continue to be uncomfortable and grow and learn about yourself. And I just think it's like, I don't know, it's one of the greatest gifts that life can give you. You just got to be open to it. And
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Um, I want to now kind of use this for you, like open space to all the things you're working on. I know you said you got a vlog, which by the way, where can people find the vlog and the stuff you're doing? But wait,
Yeah.
before that, I want to know, how are you editing? Like, are you doing all the vlog editing like on your own?
I'm doing everything on my own. Yeah.
Baller, dude.
But I enjoy it. I love the creative process. Like that's why I did start it because I wanted to do something creative. So I have Journey Strength. You can find that on Instagram. Journey Strength.
We'll
It's
put the
just like,
links of everything in
yeah,
the
okay.
description as
Okay,
well.
then I'm gonna
So,
talk vaguely. So it's Journey
okay,
Strength, my IG, Rachael Adams, my personal Instagram, and then my YouTube channel is also under Rachael Adams. And I have a mentorship under Journey Strength where I help female athletes own their confidence through the power of mindset and self-discovery. And I have my mentorship program opening the doors in January 2023, and I'm so excited.
cool.
Um, but yeah, my YouTube channel is just me bopping around Japan,
Was it
bringing you guys along on my journey.
what was it
Um,
like so far living in Japan?
I mean, we've had so many volleyball tournaments there. It kind of became like a second home. So it wasn't
Cool.
like too jarring of
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
a transition. But I mean, Japan, I don't know if you guys play there a lot, but it's
We've been to
so,
Osaka a couple times. I love
yeah.
Japan's been amazing. Every
It's
experience I've had
amazing.
there.
Like
Yeah.
there's not a piece of trash on the ground. Everyone is so respectful to you.
Mm,
Everything has a system. The public transportation is amazing. I can just hop on a train and go anywhere and everywhere. I feel safe to walk around at night as a woman.
mm,
People's bikes are unlocked. If I had to be in a like it's the best country to be with the situation that I am living with my
mm.
husband as he plays basketball. So I'm really happy.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay,
Wait, but
well,
I
yeah.
want to leave the people with, if you're listening to the podcast and you made it to this point, make sure you leave Taylor a comment
Oh,
on his
please.
IG
No,
or
no.
slide into his DMs and let him know what you have learned from this recording or recording in the past, because I'm sure he would love to hear it. And if he's add any value into your life, just
That's a
some words of
lie. If you
affirmation.
got shit to say, keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear any of it, dude. Don't
He
don't
wants to hear
encourage me and give me a big head and I think I'm doing such a great job. No, I'm just
it.
kidding. No, the opposite. I think if you're a female athlete, like you're sleeping if you're not going in and seeing what she has to offer and trying to be a part of it. I think again, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, who else is offering like mentorship? Who else is offering these things as a pro athlete who's been there? And nobody. So like come on, dude. It's so cool. This is and It's so interesting, right? As this space, it's so new in the volleyball community of professional athletes, like opening themselves up and being like, hey, you want to like talk personally about things? Like even this podcast, it's like 10 years ago, you couldn't hear from any pro volleyball players. You'd have to listen to some like shitty FIVB interview or like some local interview thing, which is like, hey, Rachel, what's your favorite color? What was it like to be an Olympian? Like, that's why I
Yeah.
love these conversations. That's why I try to keep them as like casual and honest as possible. I could probably do so much better. I'm probably a terrible host. Doesn't matter. But I think it's like, for me, the most important part of this space is keeping it just honest and real, and just allowing this to be something that's just like, we can both uniquely be ourselves. And I think just us having conversation, hopefully someone listening is just like, oh, I vibe with that. I really empathize with that. Or like, and that's why I love bringing on different types of guests, because there's so many people who like so many different things. And I think this was amazing. I love what you're doing. I really hope people go check out what you have to offer. I think it's so cool. And you're also a middle blocker. And so there will always be a part of you that is just a special part in my heart, where it's just like, we had our
Same.
special time together. I really, really couldn't have more love for you and what you're doing. And yeah, I hope we stay in touch with this too, because I also think there's some really unique opportunities to collaborate in the future we can talk about after. But
Nothing but love for you, Taylor.
yeah, okay, cool. This was great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You guys go check out what she's doing. It's gonna be great, dude. You're the best.
You too.
Okay, see
Bye.
ya.